Imagine being rejected by your own father, not because you were weak, but simply because you were born different. Long ago in ancient Persia, a child with hair as white as snow entered the world. His unusual appearance frightened his powerful father, who ordered him to be abandoned in the mountains. But that helpless baby did not die. He was found by the legendary Simurgh, a magnificent bird of wisdom and magic, and the child who had been cast away would one day become one of the greatest heroes in Persian mythology. This is the story of Zal. Many centuries ago, there lived a famous Persian warrior named Sam. Sam was the son of Nariman and one of the greatest champions of Iran. He was respected by kings, feared by his enemies, and admired by people throughout the land. He possessed enormous strength and had won many battles for his country. But despite all his victories, Sam carried a deep sadness in his heart. He had no child to continue his family's name. For years, he prayed for an heir. At last, his prayers were answered. One day, a messenger came running from the woman's chambers. "My lord," he announced joyfully, "you have a son. He is healthy, strong, and as beautiful as the sun." Sam's heart filled with happiness. The mighty warrior hurried to see the child he had waited so long to hold. But the moment Sam looked upon his newborn son, his happiness disappeared. The baby's skin was healthy and his body was strong, but his hair was completely white. It was as white as the snow covering the highest mountains. The child looked as though he had already lived for 100 years. Sam had never seen anything like that. Instead of recognizing the child's beauty, he was overcome by fear and shame. What will the people say? He wondered. Will they believe that this child is a demon? Will my enemies laugh at the house of Sam? His fear of other people's judgment became stronger than his love for his newborn son. In anger and confusion, Sam looked toward the heavens. "Why have I been given such a strange child?" he cried. Then he made a terrible decision. He ordered his servants to take the baby far from the palace and leave him in the wilderness. The servants carried the helpless child deep into the mountains until they reached Mount Alborz, a wild and distant place whose peaks seemed to touch the sky. There, upon the lonely rock, they placed the baby on a cold ground. Then they turned away and left him behind. The child had no blanket, no food, and no mother to comfort him. High above the clouds, however, lived the Simurgh. The Simurgh was no ordinary bird. She was an ancient and magnificent creature with enormous wings, brilliant feathers, and wisdom gathered over countless ages. Her nest rested high upon Mount Alborz, beyond the reach of ordinary people. As the Simurgh flew over the mountain in search of food for her young, she heard the crying of the abandoned baby. She descended toward the rocks and found the child alone and helpless. The Simurgh could easily have left him there, but instead she felt compassion. Gently, she lifted the baby in her powerful claws and carried him high into the mountains. She brought him to her nest and placed him beside her own young. From that day forward, the Simurgh became his protector and mother. She fed him, sheltered him beneath her great wings, and taught him the mysteries of the world. Years passed. The abandoned baby grew into a tall and powerful young man. His body became strong, his heart became courageous, and his mind became filled with the Simurgh's wisdom. His white hair shone like silver beneath the sun. Because his hair made him appear older than his years, he became known as Zal. Although Zal lived far from civilization, stories about him slowly spread among travelers. People spoke of a silver-haired young man who lived among the mountains and had been raised by a magical bird. Eventually, these stories reached Sam. By then, many years had passed since he had abandoned his son. Sam had grown older, but the memory of his terrible decision still troubled him. Then, one night, Sam had a powerful dream. He saw a rider approaching from a distant land. The rider looked at him and said, "Oh, proud warrior, how can you search the world for glory when you abandoned your own innocent son?" Sam awoke in fear. On another night, he dreamed of his son again, alive, strong, and standing beneath the shadow of a mighty bird. At last, Sam understood that the child's white hair had never been a sign of evil. The true wrong had been his own pride and fear. Filled with regret, Sam gathered his own men and traveled toward Mount Alborz. After a long and dangerous journey, they reached the foot of the great mountain. Far above them, Sam saw the Simurgh's nest. Beside it stood a magnificent young man with broad shoulders and long white hair. Sam immediately knew that this was his son. He fell to the ground and begged for forgiveness. "Oh God," he cried, "forgive me for what I've done. If my son is returned to me, I will never again reject him. I will honor him and protect him for the rest of my life." The Simurgh heard Sam's words. She knew the time had come for Zal to return to the world of humans. But Zal was heartbroken. The Simurgh was the only mother he had ever known. Her nest had been his home, and her young had been his family. "Why must I leave you?" Zal asked. The Simurgh comforted him. "You were born for a great destiny," she said. "You must live among your people, but remember, I will never truly abandon you." She pulled a golden feather from her wing and gave it to him. "Keep this feather with you. Whenever you are in terrible danger and have no other hope, place it upon a fire. I will see the smoke and come to help you." Then the Simurgh carried Zal down from the mountain and placed him before his father. When Sam saw his son closely, he was filled with wonder. Zal was not a monster or a symbol of shame. He was handsome, wise, powerful, and noble. Sam embraced him and asked for his forgiveness. He promised that Zal would never again be treated as an outcast. Together, father and son returned home. The people gathered to see the mysterious young man with silver hair, but when they witnessed his strength, intelligence, and noble character, their fear disappeared. Zal would eventually become one of the most respected heroes of Iran. He would fall in love with the beautiful princess Rubabeh, and together they would become the parents of Rostam, the greatest champion in the Shahnameh. The child who had once been abandoned for looking different became the father of Persia's most legendary hero, and the magical feather of the Simurgh would one day help save both Rubabeh and the unborn Rostam from death. The story of Zal reminds us that being different is not a weakness. The qualities people fear or reject may become the very thing that makes someone extraordinary. Sam saw only his son's white hair and felt shame. But the Simurgh looked beyond his appearance and recognized the greatest hidden within him. Sometimes the person the world rejects is the one destined to change it. Okay, that's the end of Zal's story, but it's not the end of our story. His story goes beyond this and continues in the next videos. So if you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to my channel to learn more about Iran and its fascinating stories. Also, please let me know what you think about this story of Shahnameh.